As a seeker of truth, you desire to develop spiritually, be powerfully transformed, and experience Christ. You take the doctrine that men and women can become like God, our heavenly parents, very seriously, and you want to put in the effort now so that promise can be realized. But perhaps you've struggled to part the veils of unbelief, false beliefs and traditions, assumed identity, mortal challenges, and fear, which conceal the knowledge and wisdom that will enable you to ascend. Latter-day Disciples is designed to help you explore the path of ascension, unfold the mysteries of godliness, and seek to become spiritual kings and queens unto the Most High God. Using resources including the Hidden Wisdom podcast, the Tower in the Garden blog, our online temple course, House of Learning, and Megan Farner's book, Consider Yourself as Eve, we hope to provide you with what you need to understand your true identity, heal from iniquity, and experience a more intimate relationship with God. We are so excited for you to join this incredible community of like-minded and like-hearted Latter-day Disciples of Christ. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Hidden Wisdom by the Latter-day Disciples. I am so excited to be joined today by Naomi Fox-Reyna. Naomi is an honorary doctor of divinity and the founder of Light-Filled, where she certifies astrologers and human design experts to guide others into deeper purpose, spiritual alignment, and radiant living. Known for her compassionate clarity and God-centered wisdom, Naomi helps others unlock their divine design and step fully into their sacred calling. When she's not studying charts, she's hiking Utah's Red Rocks or spending time with her husband, Ralph, and their 6 children. Naomi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this and what we're going to talk about.
I know. We were chatting just before this and we were like, oh my gosh, we've got to start recording or else we're just going to have an incredible conversation that no one gets to listen to. So I'm really excited to have you on. I have a lot of friends who are in your community and I've seen how great your ministry is. I'm really excited for our topic today. We're going to talk about spiritual gifts and understanding how we can know what our spiritual gifts are and how we can lean into them as informed by things like the zodiac, which we'll talk about a little bit, signs in the heavens, the stars, everything that God has ordained perfectly. And also maybe human design will come into this a little bit too, which we haven't talked about on the show before. So I'm excited to introduce that a little bit. But before we go into that, can you tell us a little bit more about you and your ministry and how God led you to such a fun place and such a fun calling to have?
Absolutely. I love how you put that it's so fun because like so many who come to this powerful work, it came through pain and arduousness and screwing up and, all of the shame and all of the heaviness. And yet what I found was the nuggets of I didn't screw anything up. Everything is perfect. It always was. And by the way, now I get to harvest all of these amazing levels of wisdom so that I can be able to turn around and share that with so many. And so the way that I was introduced to specifically astrology and then later human design, I was going through my second divorce and this one was so much worse. And he was violent and all of the terrible things and never not cheating. And it was so my brain was soup and I had just been relocated by God to a new place and I needed a haircut. And I had one really good friend that lived where I was at. That's why I moved to where I did. And she saw somebody. So I just went and saw her. And I'm there getting my haircut by this woman named Julie. And I had not known her before this moment. And she's, oh, I'm really into astrology. And I'm like, that's wonderful. I'm at a point now where I hold no judgment for anything. I have nothing that is pride left in me at this point. And I came from a very academic family, very religious and just wonderful family, but just really valued science and proof. And I just always thought astrology was like what you see in the newspaper and that it was just bunk. And when I read about my sign, it was like, that doesn't really apply. So I just sort of let it be aside because, we don't touch the evil things and astrology was always lumped in the evil things. So I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. That was enough. And so then she's like, oh, when's your birthday? What's your sign? And I'm like, I'm a Sagittarius, but yeah, I don't really resonate with it. And she's like, okay, do you know the minute you're born? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everyone know the minute they're born? And she's like, no. So she runs my chart. She's like, oh, you know the minute you're born because your moon is Virgo. And she's like, I bet you da 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 da. And in like 10 minutes, she told me things about myself that I know people for 10 years that I don't say. And it blew my mind and it opened my heart. And I knew that God was in it. And I was like, you have to tell me how you know all of that. And you have to teach me this whole system. So way to secure a regular client. So I would go get my haircut and get my nails done every 2 weeks with her. And we would just chat about all the things. And I joined Facebook groups and it felt like digging through the sludge of what is online about astrology and, picking things up and asking God, like, is this true? And does this work? And I looked at different astrology courses because it woke up this divine affinity in me for astrology that I didn't even know existed. And as I continued, God led me and directed me. And I was very clearly told not to enroll in this class or that class or whatever. And I sort of just gathered and sifted it through God's direction. And then with that, I got, I couldn't shut up about it. And I was running people's charts and I was talking to them and got invited to do chart readings and then asked to teach classes. And then people begged me to offer a certification because I cannot tell you how many people have told me that they will not learn or listen to astrology from anyone but me because of the devotion and the dedication. And along the way, God told me, hey, by the way, what you're doing is called light-filled astrology. And this is what you're called to do. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be an astrologer. That'll make me weird. And God's like, I don't care. Like, not that God didn't care, but it was just this, like, that's irrelevant. That's not the point. But you need to do this. And I was like, if I do astrology, there are people that won't be able to hear the message that I have. And God said, I know, but there's people that can only hear you if you're talking this way. And that this is what I'm calling you to do. And so we got here.
That's so beautiful. And that just sounds like God to me. Like that sounds like, I think I've had similar conversations. Yes. So I can totally see God in what you just said. But yeah, so I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts on that because, so I was kind of like you. I think astrology was something I just never thought about. And it just seemed silly, I didn't see what the big deal was. And I knew that there were a lot of people that had hesitations about it. There's a lot of fear surrounding it. And so I just didn't really look at it until it was only about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I have a mentor who was teaching me about the zodiac. And he was teaching me about how in the stars, in these 12 constellations, we see a testimony of Jesus Christ across Absolutely. Every single one of them. And I've since been able to study with other scholars, LDS scholars, who are very deep and very wise. And I was actually just listening to a lecture this morning, and they were talking about how the zodiac was called the way of eternal life. And basically the idea is that these 12 signs show this progression that we are all like in the process of making, and it's a circle. So it's eternal, right? It's this way of eternal progression and eternal life. And so knowing that, I was like, okay, that's really interesting. Like, I think there's something there. The ancients were all aware of astrology and they used it in their writings. John uses it extensively in the book of Revelation. And when I started looking into it for myself and like looking at my star chart and those of others too, like I'm definitely not an expert, but the knowing that came to me was basically this idea of course, our heavenly parents would send each of their children into the world with a testimony of who that child is, of why they were here and what they were coming to learn and what gifts they brought with them and some of the things that they were going to experience. And that's how I've come to see like a natal chart of like, this is God's testimony of who you are. And it is so precise down to the moment that you were born in the location that you were born. It's so unique. And so I just love that. And I've learned so much from that. Anyone that may be listening and thinking like, oh, but astrology is supposed to be weird. It's supposed to be bad. Like, I would suggest that I would say astrology is morally neutral. And what that means is that it's neither good nor bad. what's good or bad is your intention behind using it. So yes, there are people who use astrology for bad things. Like, that's true. You can also use it in this light-filled way that teaches people who their true identity is, that helps them to connect with God. And as we're going to discuss, also helps them know what their spiritual gifts are that they've brought here that they can be developing and using to accomplish God's purposes. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I love everything you just said. I'm just over here, like, bathing in it, and just, I completely and totally agree. It can be weaponized. It can be something that brings you closer to God. It's a full spectrum. I love how you put that it's morally neutral, like so many systems are. I think the conservative Christian church historically has kind of gone out of its way to demonize it and to repaint it, because it is a system of power, because it empowers the individual. And historically, conservative religion has been, we went through some dark ages of where it was seeking to control. And, it's a really easy way to control people, to say, if you don't do what's right, you're literally going to burn in hell forever. People will kind of straighten up and listen to whatever you say. And so there's a lot of ickiness in how religion was wielded for a long time. And unfortunately, astrology is just still stuck in that. But I find that those that are called to it, not that this is like where you eventually end up if you're on your spiritual path, but it's not like, oh, good, you've reached the point of accepting astrology. But I do find that there are so many people who their calling, it leads them to this, and that this is part of their path, and that it can be beautiful and elevated. And I know for me, one of the biggest reasons why it drew me closer to God is because it gave me so much more compassion for myself. And once I wasn't railing on myself with whatever is the opposite of compassion, fill in the blank, I could hear God more clearly as he was telling me that he loved me and beckoning me to him even more, because I wasn't so caught up in, oh my gosh, I screwed this up. Oh, I did this wrong. Oh, I'm such a failure. I can't believe this. Why can't I be more like XYZ? Why can't I do it like this? I could actually claim who I am and allow that compassion that is such a godly attribute to actually live in me. And then I could hear God so much more clearly as I dove into these systems.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that testimony. And as you were talking to, another thought that kind of came to mind is that it might be helpful to frame astrology as a more feminine methodology compared to what you're talking about, which I would say are kind of the masculine, which is like scholarship, academia, science. Like, those tend to be a little bit more built in a masculine way. Whereas astrology, it's much more fluid. It's more nuanced. There are so many layers. Like, it's literally endless. Like, every moment things are shifting. And you can learn from that. Like, you can learn from every moment. And so hopefully that's helpful too. And it also helps us understand why there is so much fear around it, is because the feminine we have been instilled with fear regarding the things that are more feminine in nature. Again, and I would say that feminine things are more morally neutral. It's more about your intention and using them, as we talked about. And so hopefully that's just helpful for people to understand of like, oh yeah, we have been taught to be afraid of all the things that are not masculine, but we need those things. Like, those things are important to us. And I love this idea of this is important for knowing ourselves, for going on that inward journey. I think there's a reason women in particular are drawn to astrology, is because it is about an inward journey of understanding who I am. And Jesus taught the kingdom of heaven is within you. Joseph Smith taught, if you want to know God, you have to understand yourself. And so this can be helpful for spiritual journeys. I agree with you. I don't think it's necessarily, required for everyone. But there is so much beauty that you can gain if you engage in this in a very Christ-centered and like God grounded way. And I appreciate that about you, that you do approach it in that way. And I can see how God uses that very intentionally. So maybe really quick before we get into talking about spiritual gifts specifically, let's back up and just talk big three. Because I think this was, kind of to your point of like, well, I know what my sign is and it doesn't really resonate with me. There's a lot of people that experience that. And it's because we're only looking at one small facet of who you actually are as a person. And if we pan out and look at our big three, we have a better idea of of a better picture of who we are. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Great lead in for this, especially for those that are brand baby new. So the day that you were born correlates with where the sun was in the zodiac. So that's why people say, like, when's your birthday? What's your sign? Because for the most part, with the exception of a handful of days throughout the year, you can just automatically know based on only the calendar day of the year what somebody's sign is. On the exceptions, that's when it's the cusp, and sometimes it shifts around a little bit of the exact moment that the sun shifts from one zodiac sign to another. But the moon goes through the zodiac the same way as the sun does, and it changes signs every 2.5 days. So if somebody just says, oh, I was born on June 11th, I know that they're a Gemini, but I have absolutely no way of knowing. Even if they told me the year, I'd have to look it up. I do not have that memorized on like where the sun was on June 11th in any given year. And so the moon could be in a completely different sign than your sun sign. It may be in the same sign, and it may be in an opposing sign or a internally conflicting sign or a very harmonious sign or cooperative sign from it, or a sign that has no relationship with the sun. And so understanding the relationship between your sun and your moon will probably explain your entire life. Just that one bit of info. And then you have your ascendant, which is where the zodiac, what if you were to look over at the eastern horizon at the moment you were born, what slice of the sky was the zodiac in at that moment? So if you were born at sunrise, your sun sign and your ascendant would be in the same sign. If you were born at sunset, they would be in opposing signs, and around it goes. So you have 3 different bits of information that could be any combination of things because they're not inherently related to each other. Some things are inherently related to each other, like Mercury can only be one sign in front of the same sign as the sun or one sign behind because Mercury stays so close to the sun. But the moon could be in any sign, and the ascendant can be in any sign. So you get this complete roll of the dice, 3 different signs that you have that are profoundly how you show up. Your sun sign is the core of you, your external. It's very much how you shine, what you're here to experience at the core of you. Your moon is your inner world and how you are when no one else is around. A lot of it is how you see yourself and why you can be so confused, why people misinterpret you. And your ascendant is the version of you that's like, hi, nice to meet you. The in-person first time interaction, or if you're holding someone kind of at arm's length, that's your ascendant. Another way I like to put it is the ascendant is the front porch, like the UPS guy gets to deliver packages, and maybe your best friend shows up and she's on the front porch for a hot minute. But as soon as you're like, oh, come on in, I'm chopping vegetables, just pull up a stool and we can just keep chatting. That's like your sun sign. That's the core of you. It's like a lot of people get that privilege, unless you're a Scorpio, and then you're like, nobody else gets to come. And then your moon sign is like the master bathroom, like who gets to walk in while you're taking a bath level of intimacy. Most people only have 1, 2, 5 people at the most. And I'm not talking like that you would genuinely let them see you naked, but that level of intimacy.
This is a metaphor.
Yes. But, and I often see it too, where if people are honest with themselves, they're not even allowing their spouse to see that level of intimacy just because of maybe there's been ruptured trust and all of that in the marriage that just needs repair. And we can kind of identify, like, where am I living in my life? I've seen people living entirely in their ascendant. They don't ever let anybody in. And people, that their sun sign is coming out, and then people where you'll never see their moon sign. They'll never reveal that part of themselves to you because they don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. Thank you for that. So do we want to give an example? We want to talk about yours and mine really quick? And
sure, yeah, sounds great. Okay, so we'll start with you. So you are an Aquarius, which means you're here to really be unusual and out of the box. Like, my interpretation of Aquarius energy is it's kind of like reaching through space and time and getting something and bringing it back to the now, right? Like, Aquarius is like, we're not doing things in the here and now because we don't have to. It's very weird. It's very unusual. It's often associated with aliens because it's coming from another place than the planet. Like, it's got such an oddness to it that most Aquariuses wear like a badge. Like, yeah, you bet I'm weird. Like, I'm so glad to be weird. And unless there's conflicting things in their chart, they usually embrace or even like hope that other people see their weirdness because it's such a part of them. And then your moon sign, though, is in Scorpio, which is your moon sign and your sun sign don't have an actual aspect of squaring each other, as they call it in astrology, but sign-wise, Aquarius and Scorpio are at an internal conflict with each other. And they're both fixed signs, which means they both have like a stubbornness about them. But your sun sign does it in an air sign way, very cerebral, very intellectual. And your moon sign does it in a very emotional, very intuitive, fluid way. Aquarius is an air sign, which is a masculine energy in astrology. And Scorpio is a water sign, which is a feminine energy in astrology. And so I love that you have that within you, and it totally makes sense. And then your ascendant is Libra, which is very lovely and balanced. And technically Libra is a masculine energy, although it's definitely the most feminine of the masculine energies. And it is the energy of the masculine and feminine in balance with each other. And so ascending Libras are often very lovely and gracious and diplomatic and able to converse and just kind of network and interact with a wide variety of people and just be so good at it. Like my oldest is a rising Libra, and I was waiting for it to like pop. And then about the time he hit high school, he figured out a few keys and he became very popular. he has all the confidence with the ladies and all the things. And he turns 21 this year. And it's been so fun to watch his progression of him really like breathing into himself. And he still has a ways to go, and I'm sure he would disagree with some aspects of how I see him. But as his mother, I just look at that and I'm like, oh, there's your rising Libra. Like, he's just very agreeable, he's very lovely, and I know there's way more going on below the surface than what he shows sometimes. And so also Libras, fun fact, if you're an ascendant Libra, literally all the energy of your chart is in balance all the time, because it shifts all of your houses to be in the quote opposite house of what the energy is. And so you literally walk the path of continual balance every day, never not, in every single thing you do.
Well, that's awesome. I love hearing that. Yeah, no, it totally, that all resonates. I tend to think of my Aquarius energy as like save the world energy, because I think that is that fair to say that that's kind of an Aquarian?
It's very much a love of humanity, maybe not loving individual people.
Yeah.
My middle one is a Leo, but he has a stellium is what it's called in Aquarius, which is 4 placements, including his moon. When he was 9, I asked him just one day, I was like, hey, what do you think your purpose is here on Earth? Like, he's a really powerful person. Like, he's just got this magnificent presence. I'm so excited to see how he develops. And he, at 9 years old, he didn't miss a beat. He said, I am here to save humanity from itself. And I was like, oh, I was like, I had like flashes of like Hitler in my mind, like that, you know, people that like have like really clear sense of purpose, but don't maybe follow God. So I was like, you need to be very clear on how God thinks that's supposed to come about. Like, so, and we've revisited that over the years, because that's not a one-time conversation. Like, I want him to routinely turn to the Lord, but I do believe he is here for something very, very significant that has been the hallmark ever since his conception. It has been testifying that way. So, and since your listeners will be like, wait, we didn't cover Naomi's, we'll just cover my big 3 really quick before we run on. So I'm a Sagittarius, but my moon is Virgo, and my moon and my sun actually have the relationship of squaring each other. So that means my needs and my wants are perpetually in conflict with each other. My inner world wants order and peace and stillness and cleanliness and prediction and plans and all of the beauty of the service and like sacredness, and like everything is a calling. Everything I'm called to do is, you know, just very, very, very much like a conversation with God. The Virgin is Virgo. And then my Sagittarius is like, let's go, we'll figure it out when we get there. It's just, you know, show up at the airport with your toothbrush and backpack the, you know, book the next international flight, and like, it's fine. And so like this conflict, this perpetual dance that I had within myself, no other personality system ever began to explain this. And then my ascendant is conjunct my sun sign. I was born 3 minutes before sunrise, so they're 1.5 degrees apart. So when I show up very bright, very big. It almost has a Leo quality, because the sun and the ascendant conjunct is very, 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 very bright, very, very, very shiny. Like, I had an astrologer tell me once when I was in my early journey, he said, your ascendant and your sun sign being the way that they are, he said, you will walk in a room and people's heads will turn even if you don't make a noise, because your energy is so big. And I was like, That's so true. Like it's happened my entire life, and leaning into it instead of, I mean, how do you dim a light that's that visible?
Mm-hmm.
And so just acknowledging like, okay, here we go. And I also come across as extremely authentic because there's not a shift between my sun and my moon. It's like, you know, my front porch is enormous and come on in and here's the party. And you can know me for a long time and not see a huge shift until you get to my inner world, which is a little neurotic and a little bit uptight and a little bit crazy. And we have a lot of fun laughing at the antics of my Virgo moon. Because I healed my judgment of it, I came to love that part of myself, which was a long journey before I met my husband. But one of my favorite things he says to me is he'll just look at me when I'm just being very like it needs to go this way. And he'll go, I love your Virgo moon. And I'm like, it's like the most intimate thing he could say to me in that moment, because that's the part of me that I felt the most shame about, but it's also the part of me that needed the most love and softness and support.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. We'll include resources for anyone who's wanting to look up your big three. Like, I'm pretty sure you have something that we can.
Yeah. I have a free mini course that goes over it.
Cool. Okay. So let's get to the good stuff. I mean, this is all good stuff, but
let's going with the good stuff.
Yeah. Let's talk about spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we have some dialogue that we see in the scriptures, and sometimes maybe we talk about it a little bit at church, maybe. But I would say for the most part, this is an aspect of the gospel that is not really touched on. And if it is, I feel like we have a lot of misunderstandings about spiritual gifts, both like what they are and how they come to us. And like, certainly I don't think we ever talk about like, how do I use this gift in alignment with God? You know, like there's kind of an assumption of like, oh, if I have a gift, then it's, you know, I'm going to be using it right all the time. And so I think there's a lot of different directions we could go with this, but I know that this is something that you're passionate about. So I'd love to just hear like kind of your overview thoughts. And then we can transition into like, okay, how do I actually know my spiritual gifts? Because I think that that's something that we don't talk about either. So, okay.
I totally
wide open for you.
Agree. I have so many thoughts. I'm like, how do I communicate all of these really well? Probably the number one thing about spiritual gifts is that in the developing of it, you first need to like be aware that you can develop spiritual gifts. And second is to be in regular conversation with people that are talking this way in a sacred, honoring way about this, because nothing awoke my spiritual gifts more than being around people that were talking about theirs in a appropriate way. I've seen people use it as a bragging right or whatever, and that energy is just icky. I don't like it. But conversing, like there was a woman I met while I was separated from my second husband and going through this process, and she could hear angels from the other side since she was 4 years old. She was raised in a very non-religious home, and then she converted to Catholicism as a young adult because at least they talked about angels and she didn't feel as crazy. And then she was in her, I think 50s when she found the LDS church. And at the time I met her, she was 73 and she was the Relief Society president. And this woman was just wild. And she was like just this gorgeous crone feminine woman. And she changed my life. And she started out by saying that she had had a dream about me and needed to talk to me. And as we got to talking, it was really that my grandparents had kept her up half the night. She was the next door neighbor of my best friend where I was staying. And it wasn't that she had a dream. She was literally conversing with my grandparents, who I had felt with me, but I didn't have the developed skills to know what they were trying to communicate. And she and I chatted for about 3 hours, like quote, with my grandparents sitting on her living room couch. And it was such a sacred, powerful experience. And then the more that I got to know her and the more that I talked with her about how her gifts work, it was little bits where I'd be like, I've had that experience. I just cast it aside. I just thought that was not a big deal. Or just talking with her. Now I don't have the gifts that she has and I don't need to, and it's fine. But just hearing bits from her, it was like, oh, I actually have more gifts in this area than I realized. And I was able to allow the space for them to grow. And then it happened again and again with others. And then I was led to a mentor who, while we were working with each other, we're doing a session. And she's like, oh, that's because you have 10 out of 10 gold colored glasses. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, I don't know. Let's find out. Like she was just receiving this download during our session. And gold colored glasses is where you can genuinely see people's best self. And obviously that can be weaponized against yourself. And, the adversary can love to use that gift poorly. But as you consciously develop that gift, and she then developed this whole system of all these different gifts, different families of gifts, like the people gifts, like gold colored glasses, and just being able to see how it's all categorized. And I did a bunch of work with her, and her program changed my entire life. And she and I have been working on some collaborative work for the future, because it, quote, normalizes it, because I think we just think it's out there, it's woo, it's for the deeply spiritual, the people who can quit their job and just pray and meditate all day long and all the things. And it's not, it's normal, but it's still sacred, because the sacred can become normal.
Beautiful. Yeah. And maybe we need to help broaden our perspective too, because again, when we hear the term spiritual gifts, we usually think of it in a religious context.
Yeah.
And that's actually quite limiting, right? Because these spiritual gifts, we are all spiritual beings. That is our true identity. We're having a mortal human experience right now. But our truest self is spiritual. And so we all have spiritual gifts. It's a part of who we are. And I would say that these things are affinities that we have to look past just the physical things, right? And so we tend to get fixated on our five senses. The natural man is very much based on what can I see, hear, taste, feel, touch, right? I already said that. Smell. That's the one I missed. There's 5 of them, right? Okay. And so spiritual gifts require us to tap into this other level of ourself that is both deeper inside of us and also higher, a higher version of ourself, a truer version of, I would say, our more authentic self is who we are as a spiritual being. And those things are available to us, but we do have to overcome that physicality.
Absolutely. I actually was just teaching gospel doctrine yesterday, and we were talking about D&C 29, and I loved how the Lord not only mentioned everything is spiritual, but he came back to it again. It was repeated. And anytime you're going to take up scriptural space with a repeating thing, it's oh, no, don't miss this, or let me say it another way so it lands deeper. But everything is spiritual. It is all spiritual. And we had such a beautiful discussion with all of this wide variety of people in my ward. And I am just so honored and grateful to be able to lead those discussions and see how, what can come out of it, because that's the point of everything, is that we gather and we talk of Christ and we glorify him. And yes, everything is spiritual. And when we get caught up in the now, the natural man, we miss so much. So countless amounts of data points are missed if we only rely on the 5 senses.
Yeah, so true. And I love the point that you made too about how having a community is so important. This is something that I've noticed as well, is that I have felt more ability and maybe permission to develop my spiritual gifts once I found a community of women mostly who are owning their spiritual gifts and who talk about it, and we're able to hold space for each other. And for us, it's not weird. It's just for someone from the outside looking in, it would look weird for sure. But for us, this is just oh, we're all acting as a higher version of ourselves. We're just tapped into God and to our piece of godhood as well. So let's talk a little bit about identifying spiritual gifts. And you have some tools that can help us do that. Can you talk about how you found your gifts, and then also how you could help other people find their gifts?
Absolutely. So you can look at it through an astrology lens, you can look at it through a human design lens, and then you can also look at it through the system of spiritual gifts. And in my observation, they are 3 completely separate systems, but that can work beautifully together, just like astrology and human design are separate systems, but work beautifully together. So if you're looking at your astrology chart, anywhere that you see a concentration of energy, anywhere there's a lot of placements close together, you're going to see spiritual gifts there. because you have a lot of movement, a lot of blessings, a lot of benefits, and a lot of lessons. And every single thing in our life that is like a failure point or something significant that we feel shame about is only our gifts turned up too loud or down too quiet. Every single time. Any significant wounding that any of us have ever had, where it is that thing that we keep revisiting again and again, and it hurts and it hurts and it hurts, that is absolutely unequivocally a spiritual gift manifesting in you that you have judgment around, shame, you need mentorship, you need to witness other people living appropriately, whatever is the thing that will remove the block, and probably all of them. It is absolutely where God is calling us. And it's not even like I'm calling you here to heal, which is true, but it's to heal so that you can use this powerfully. And yes, it's not just the lessons from, quote, doing it wrong for so long. It's that there is embedded within you an already pre-existing spiritual gift.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I've never thought of it that way. Keep going.
And so like in your chart, you have a few different conjunctions. You have your really strong conjunction of your moon and Pluto and the North Node. The North Node is always going to be the most elevated energy in the chart, hands down, period, the end. Because the North Node is your soul's direction. It is unencumbered by any of the shadow of that sign, where the South Node is kind of always tangoing with the shadow of that sign. And the South Node is always exactly opposite the North Node if you are running your chart on software that doesn't show the South Node.
Should we share it? Do you want to share your screen?
Sure, yeah. So this is your astrology chart. Aren't you lovely? And so here you have this amazing, powerful cluster. And I like the software Astro charts because of many, many things. And I also really, really deeply don't like it for other things. So I have a love with it because it shoves the symbols around. But this like upside down, like looks like hair with a face in it. It might also just look like hair without the face in it, is this outer line here. And then this one, this like orb looking man thing, is Pluto, and then the moon is the moon. And you can see these three little tick marks here really, really clustered tightly at the very end of Scorpio. This is what we call a genius point. This is definitely what I would call a spiritual gifts point, because you're dealing with the moon, which is, it can show up in light or shadow. We can definitely be in shadow of our moon. And Pluto is kind of going to manifest for a long period of our life as the shadow of it, because Pluto is the one that reveals the shadows, and it's a generational planet. It'll spend anywhere from like 12 to 30 years in a sign, depending on its rotation and where it's at in the zodiac. And the North Node here is always that elevated trajectory point that your soul is pulsing you towards. And we spend the first like 30 to 40 years of our life in our South Node energy, which would be here at the very end of Taurus for you in the 8th house. And so your trajectory is to go from Taurus to Scorpio, from the reliable, the seen, the taste, touch, feel, the senses is Taurus, and moving towards the unseen and the occult and the hidden and the real but invisible. Like if you look out at the ocean and you're like, oh, it's a calm day, and you see like the waves are just kind of mild. But if you went down a mile into the ocean, or even deeper, if you're like at the Mariana Trench, like there's a ton going on down there. There's a ton that is displaying and showing and revealing itself that is very, very real. It's very much happening, but you can't see it. But that doesn't mean it's not there. And so your calling in life is to do that. And some people have the opposite. They'll leave the invisible and the hidden and all of that. They'll leave deception behind. They'll leave things that are underneath of the table, and you're trying to conceal it, and they're moving to the tangible. They're moving to the reliable, and you can put your feet on it. And that's an elevated Taurus and a shadowy Scorpio when the trajectory is opposite. And so I love astrology because there is absolutely nothing that is inherently bad. It's not like, oh, you drew the short straw, you have a sucky life ahead of you. Like it's always, always, always good. But pretty much everything is going to have a light and a shadow to it, really, except the nodal path. And the South Node can be the gifts that you came with, but really the universe is saying, okay, awesome. We're so glad you mastered that. Now you got to put all that down and go towards this uncomfortable place way over here. And that's life, and it evolves and it pushes us too. When we're little children, we're not in our North Node, and that's totally fine. It's a lifetime of movement. And so I would look at that. You were born during a rare conjunction of Uranus and Neptune down here in Capricorn. It probably lasted about a year or so that people would have this as they kind of went retrograde and forward because they both move so slow. And yours are a couple of degrees apart here, and some born close to you, they were at the exact degree. But this is a genius point for your generation, because you have Uranus, which is like the energy of Aquarius. It's from the future, and it shakes things up, and it's rebellion, and it's all of that. And then you have Neptune, which is deeply spiritual. It's highly elevated, but it's also delusion. So illusion, delusion, spiritual, everything here. And so your micro generation of this tiny little sect of time that you were born in is here to bring wild, massive, like electric, powerful spirituality in a way that pretty much nobody else is ready for. And collectively, we all experienced this around the years that you were born. Like collectively, those that were already alive experienced this transit, but for you, it's imprinted within you.
Well, that's fun. Good for us millennials. That fits the bill. I think that's true of our generation.
Well, and you're at the very end of the millennial generation. And so not all millennials have this at all, because those that were born, like in the mid 80s, they don't have this at all. Like it's not in their charts. Like they may be in the same sign for several years, but like to have it conjunct, which I'm very conservative with what's called my orbs. And if you get more than 3.5 degrees apart, I definitely wouldn't call these conjunct, because they're outer planets. And so some people will, but I just think it's a misunderstanding of the application of astrology. Something like your Venus and your sun sign here, I would call these conjunct because you're dealing with the sun sign. The sun has a huge orb of like 8 degrees that if anything is within 8 degrees on either side, it's considered, in the same place, because the sun is so just the way that the sun is. But these outer planets, they move so slow. If we called it an 8-degree orb, everything would be conjunct for years and years and years, because they move so slow.
Okay.
And then it just loses potency when you do that. So
cool.
Yeah.
So that's really good to know. So if anyone wants to look at their chart and look for those stelliums, anything that are tightly conjunct, those are kind of the things that you look at to help identify spiritual gifts. Can you get more specific on like what spiritual gifts there are and what those might look like in a chart?
So this is where I hesitate to come up with like a very systematized way. I know that it's really tempting for like marketing speak or whatever, that people will be like, I have a plan. I see it a lot with human design, which is a different system than astrology, but they'll say, oh, this is how you know you're marketing genius. You look at your throat gates, you look at your Mercury gates, and you look at this and you look at this, and like, here you go. It's a perfectly like orchestrated marketing plan. And I look at that as an expert in human design and as all the gifts that I have. And I'm like, I think that informs it. But when we're too quick to come to a conclusion, we probably are stripping away some really valuable things. And I'm a huge fan of just staying curious. So like we looked at your tight conjunction in Scorpio. So it's really about like meditating on it and pondering if you're looking at it strictly through the lens of astrology, where you're like, okay, Scorpio is what? And you go and look at the light and the shadow of Scorpio. Scorpio is deep, it's powerful, it's feminine, it's flowing, it's the Mariana Trench, it's a tsunami, it's potent and hidden and without light, in the sense of like, if you go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, there's no light there. That doesn't mean it's an evil place. But the shadow, like I love how you talk about often, it's the shadow, meaning what needs to be unrevealed is Scorpio. Now it can absolutely show up in the shadow of like the shadow being like darkness and out of alignment with God, where it's hidden, where it's, I don't want to tell you this. I don't want to reveal this. I'm going to keep this in my pocket, even though I know that it would help you, or I know that it would further things along or whatever. Scorpio absolutely has that regular thing to contend with. And Scorpio is the energy of the detective and the curious one. A Scorpion can sit in one of the archetypes of Scorpio is a scorpion. There's many archetypes of the Scorpio energy, which is not true for all signs. It's also a spider, an eagle, a phoenix, has many different archetypes that are woven in because it's so deep. It's the deepest and most vast sign that there is. And so a Scorpion can sit and wait for 3 weeks without moving And so it's that energy of profound patience for a goal. And so just sitting with all of that and then looking at, okay, the moon sign is my inner world. It's my emotional filter. It's how I am when no one else is around, and like pondering on that. And then your generation, which is almost exclusively pinned down to millennials, which is fascinating to me how they've organized the generations when I look at Pluto movements. So Pluto in the generations is whatever your generation is here to transform collectively. I'm of the Pluto Libra generation, so I'm just the one right before you. And my generation is here to transform marriage and transform contracts and balance. We've never seen so many divorces ever in the history of ever, and unless it was back in another Pluto Libra generation, forever ago, because it takes 248 years for Pluto to go all the way around. And so every about 250 years, you're going to be repeating some of these cycles. And so when I was growing up, you never heard of people that were divorced twice. And the people that were divorced once, it was like hushes and whispers and, oh my gosh, and we don't talk about that. Now you can meet people that are divorced 3 times. Like, that doesn't mean that they're glorified or it's better, but it's not uncommon. And often it's from those that are of the Pluto Libra generation, which is about 1971 to about 1983, give or take. With a little bit of coming and goings from the retrograding in and out of signs before that. Before that, the generation was Pluto Virgo, which is transformation around exactness and rules and rightness. We see a lot of militant energy out of the Pluto Virgo. Pluto Scorpio, I illustrate all of that to create contrast for the purpose of learning. Pluto Scorpio is the energy of transformation itself. Your generation is here to transform transformation. You guys understand transformation at a level that the rest of us cannot comprehend. Even if somebody has a lot of Scorpio placements, that's great. But the Pluto there is there to dig up and to unearth and to bring to light things that have been hidden, things that are that need to be revealed. And it's slow and it's painful and it's arduous for the individuals, for collectively, all of it. We just got done with Pluto being in Capricorn since 2008. And Pluto Capricorn was going and completely removing the systems, the structure, religion, government, all of that has been like harvested. When I look at it in my mind's eye, it looks like a broken up highway of really thick cement. And it's just kind of in shambles right now. Pluto doesn't solve any problems. It just brings it to light. If it's there, if the bodies are buried, they're coming up, and it's the zombie apocalypse. And so it's this like revealing of what was underneath is what Pluto is always doing. So the millennials, you guys have such an interesting projection onto you. I just read the book recently called Can't Even, and it's all about millennials and like why millennials are the way that they are. And it was very interesting, and she gives absolutely no solutions. It's basically just being like, here's all of it. And I'm in the super micro in between of Zennials, between Gen X and millennials, because I'm born in 1980. And so like in some ways I'm sort of like a really elder millennial. I really don't identify with Gen X. And so it was interesting to read that. And my sister, who is a millennial, was like, I think you should read this book too, because it really pushed my buttons. And so just looking at how scapegoated and just everything about the millennial generation, like if you just look at and talk about, and so you look at what are the spiritual gifts that are emerging out of the millennial generation, and a lot of it will come around very catalyst gifts around being able to see what is unseen. You have seer gifts. There's a lot of gifts that I think most of us have, who have been on this spiritual path, who have been developing our spirituality and looking deeper and seeking deeper and pondering and meditating. We have already been witness to some of our spiritual gifts, but we either don't recognize the language it's coming in, or we dismiss it because it's like, oh, everybody has that. But there's so much when we just acknowledge and we speak to it that we can awaken. And I just feel like the millennials are, I don't know if you guys will be appreciated in your time. I think as things go, it will be revealed. But by the very nature of carrying that Pluto Scorpio through the whole generation of almost all millennials, it really, really is hallmarked by, we are here to unearth the very meaning of what it means to have things hidden that aren't willing to be revealed, but they need to be.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, it the phrase that came to mind was the dispensation of the fullness of times.
Yes.
And like, this is the time when everything that has been veiled, everything that's been hidden, everything that we've been lied to for centuries about, like, it comes up and out, and like, you've got to deal with it.
Yes.
And
right after Scorpio, we dove into Pluto Sagittarius, which is Sagittarius is truth. It's God. It's higher, all of that. And so when I look at the Pluto Sag generation, which are just really coming into adulthood, there's my oldest is this, and I've worked with many, many people that they're trying to understand their child. And I'm like, well, they're Pluto Sag. They will burn everything to the ground to find the truth. And they are doing it, and they are having a really hard time integrating any systems of people like, this is true. And we're trying to force feed this generation of the Pluto Sag, which was from 1994, 95 until 2008. So anybody born in that stretch of time has Pluto Sagittarius. And I don't like prediction, but as I sit with the energy of it, as these Pluto Sagittariuses hit their Saturn return, so about the time they're 30, they will receive the discipline, because we really get discipline settled in around our Saturn return, where their gifts of the Pluto Sag will start to emerge, and they will usher in truth at a level that will be amazing. And not all of them will choose into it. But if you have a Pluto Sagittarius child and you're listening to this and they're like a young adult or in their late teenagehood and all of that, and you're like, like they won't take any truth. They aren't going to church. They aren't listening to the gospel. They aren't doing this. It's like, calm down, because we cannot begin to understand the calling that they have. And they are wired to do things differently when it comes to truth. And they may emerge with something that the rest of us don't have the gifts to see. And so we need to allow that to come through in them and just love them and stop judging them. Stop thinking, oh, they're doing it wrong. They screwed it up. I screwed up. That's all just your ego revealing its face so that you can heal it and feel it and let it go. But the Pluto Sag, after the Pluto Scorpio came and did its work, now it's looking for truth.
That's beautiful. And I appreciate you saying that. And I hope that that's a message that we can apply so liberally. Because hopefully, like, if you're getting nothing out of this conversation, you're like, they're saying all these words, this sounds like a different language. Like, I definitely know that feeling. My husband kind of makes fun of me sometimes because I'm, I'll say something and he's like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, I know. But if you're hearing that, like, what I hope you can hear is we are each here on our own journey. And we're journeying together in some ways. And in other ways, we're all like, it's us and God. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Like, it means that we're all here to experience different things, to learn different things. We bring different things to the table, including different gifts. And I think that it would be so much more powerful for us if we just chose to hold space for each other's journeys instead of, as you said, passing judgment on them. I think I feel that as a millennial, you're right. Like, we get such a bad rap. Everyone pins millennials with all the problems and none of the good things. And yet that's part of what we came here to do. Like, we came here to take on that role because the world needs it. Like, all of these things are ordained by God for the highest benefit of all of us. And we're each a part of that. And so I think that that's beautiful. And I just hope that we can give more grace to each other and recognize that, like, God signed off on all of our plans. God agreed to what we were wanting to learn and how we wanted to learn it. And so let's embrace that and learn from each other instead of passing judgment and minimizing each other.
Absolutely. I love it. Oh, so good.
Okay, what comes next? So we've talked a little bit about
astrology. So human design is kind of similar because it's based on astrology. And so human design, you're going to see those clusters. You're going to see that similar, like, aligning of energies. And so looking at it, it's very similar, and looking at how the chart flows. And do you want to look at your human design chart?
Sure, we can. Well, and I was going to say too, like, I think human design might be in some ways an easier place for people to start looking for spiritual gifts because it actually, like, gives you gifts, right?
Yeah. It really can be. It really does have the aspect of like literally breaking it down for you. Okay, so here is your human design chart. And so you can see that all people have 9 centers, and most people will have some colored in and some that are white. Some people will have them all colored in and some will have them all white, but that's like less than 1% of the population are going to have those extremes. And so yours, you have 3 colored in centers, and then you have 6 not colored in centers. And of your 3, you have your sacral, your identity center, and your throat center. And your chart is really cool. And I am low-key jealous because it is literally the opposite of mine. You have your sacral, which means you have access to your physical energy, where if you are doing things that truly light you up, you will have access to physical energy, and you can go and you will regenerate energy. You're a generator type. You'll regenerate energy as you're doing things that deeply inspire you and light you up. Yes. Your identity center is defined, which means you know your direction, you know what you're doing, you have clarity and like a fixed compass within you. And your throat center is defined, which is the center of manifestation and being able to speak and express. And you have not only a direct connection from your throat to your sacral, but you also have an indirect connection that goes through here. So you are a single definition, because all of your centers flow within one manifesting generator. So I joke, it's not true, but I joke that manifesting generators, especially single definition, especially sacral manifesting generators that are single definition, won the lottery, the genetic lottery, and like literally nothing stops you, which obviously can become a problem because it can cause a person, especially a woman, to live too much in her masculine, because you don't need anyone else on a aura mechanics level, because you have the juice, you have the energy, you have the manifestation power, you can speak it into creation all on your own, and you don't have to wait for almost anything. The only thing you wait for is you wait to respond, is what your strategy is as a generator type. But because you're a manifesting generator, you wait to respond and then inform. Let me just give you a glimpse at my chart. It's literally the opposite of yours. I have the 3 in the middle are not defined, and these 2 talk to each other, and these 2 talk to each other, and these 2 talk to each other, but I have a triple split is what it's called. So I don't talk to myself within myself. I need to physically be around other people to bring me to myself, to have that flow. And so I absolutely need other people, like in everything that I do. I can't accomplish anything on my own, which has been a huge source of healing and of understanding what I was divinely created and not created to do, because I always saw myself as a fiercely independent person and I can do anything and all of that. But I am meant to connect and collaborate with a wide variety of people, but I have the ability to connect with a wide variety of people because I have so many defined centers that just kind of plug in so well. So each of these little lines and stuff is coordinating with the astrological placements. And that can show us, like, as you hover over, like you've got, like on your sacral, look at all these little boxes that turn blue on the right and the left of in the black and the red. That means you have all of those activations in just your sacral from only 2 gates. That's a lot. You have a lot of gifts with your sacral. You have a lot to offer. That's the center for sexuality, reproduction, all of that, but also for creation and for movement and for actual productivity is what comes off of the sacral, especially with, you have the gate of power, and then 14, which is also your Pluto, is the gate of power skills. So you have 34 is the gate of power, and then 14 is the gate of power skills. And so like you have an unbelievably powerful chart.
Thank you.
And it's not even like, yes, it's a compliment, but it's just fact. It's neutral. This is neutral information. Your design is that of powerful. You are here to move things. Your incarnation cross is a really, really excellent place to dive into gifts, is called the right angle cross of the Sphinx. This is created from your top 4 energies, which is your conscious sun and your conscious earth and your unconscious sun and your unconscious earth. It is the cross of these that they literally make a cross astrologically. And you are here to have this energy of the cross of the Sphinx. So it's very much about intuitively leading people to like powerful new and different experiences. And not everybody with the cross of the Sphinx is a manifesting generator. And so you're able to do it in this way. And you can see like your number one cognition, your number one spiritual gift in this definition is smell. You smell things that other people can't smell. You'll know when things are about to go moldy way before anybody else does. You can smell, you're like, oh, that smells like poo-poo. I smell a rat. I smell, like this person is full of it. You can smell the energy of things at a level that others can't.
Yeah, I'm still working on developing that.
And what
I believe that it's there, but I need to again, I think this is what is so important, and this is the invitation for people, is like you have to be aware of this so that you then can do something about it, right? And so I think that this is so helpful to give you a lot of awareness of a lot of different aspects of yourself that you then can take to the Lord and say, Lord, how do you want me to
absolutely
use this? Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like human design makes astrology look like nursery level, but ironically, the fastest things to understand in human design are the most potent. They are the most important, which is like, what's your aura type? What's your strategy? What's your authority? Because that will show you how to create like the life that you want, where you have peace or satisfaction or success or delight and surprise. And like for you, you're here for satisfaction. You're here to be deeply satisfied. And if it's not satisfying, it's not for you, period, the end. It's not even like, oh, that would be so nice to be satisfied. No, like you are divinely created to be satisfied. And if at the end of the day, if you don't collapse in bed, satisfied and slightly exhausted, you aren't living true to your design. Where for me, that would literally be the most dangerous thing I could do, is to collapse in bed exhausted. And I don't really have the same relationship with satisfaction because I'm not a generator type. And so I'm here for success, and I'm here to not do more than 4 hours a day of output. But God put a huge calling on my heart, and he's like, do this in this way. And so I have to collaborate. I have to learn. I have to delegate. I have to learn massive levels of leadership, so that, because he keeps giving me all this vision and all of this calling. And it's like, could you just make me a manifesting generator for like a week? Like, that's all that I need.
It is pretty awesome. Like I see it in my calling for sure. I mean, I wrote my book in about 2 months.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
And that's crazy. Like,
because
that's
it was
crazy.
lighting you up, and you could bend space and time, which by the way is another spiritual gift, is being able to work with time. Like one of my social media handles for my personal stuff is Queen of Timing. One of my most potent spiritual gifts is I have many timing gifts. And so being able to bend space and time to be able to accomplish projects is absolutely a spiritual gift. And I'm sure anybody listening has been like, yeah, I've done that a few times or whatever. And maybe some people have done it a lot, or they've been like, I've seen people do it, but I didn't know that was a spiritual gift. Like when you drive somewhere that takes 45 minutes, but you get there in 38, it's like, how did that happen? Well, that's a spiritual gift.
That's so cool. Okay. So at one point we talked about like categories of gifts. Can we go back and like review those really quick? Because I just don't want people to leave being like, I don't even know like what gifts are called or like what they would be relevant to. Like no one is thinking about like, oh, I have the gift to bend space and time. Like no one knows that. So like what are the categories, and maybe what are some examples from each category, just to get people's wheels turning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like maybe those who are listening can just like tune into your heart a little bit and like trust your intuition and like see which one stands out to you. And that might be a good place to start.
Absolutely. Yes. So like, I think there's lots of ways to talk about spiritual gifts. I definitely don't think that the way that I see it is like definitive be all end all. I'm sure there's people listening that are like, I love spiritual gifts. I have a whole program about it and I teach it. And that's awesome. Please do that. Yes. We need so many people talking about this. Where most of my like more formal instruction around spiritual gifts has been both from the scriptures and prayer, but also like I had talked about earlier, I was working with a mentor. Her name is Cami Orange, and she and I have worked together off and on for many years, and we're currently collaborating to put what she had taught previously into something that can reach the masses, like I'm doing with my other programs. And so she is the one that intuited, received the clarity about these different spiritual gifts families. And so the way that she taught it before and the way that it will be taught in the future it's going to evolve because the spiritual gifts have upgraded on the planet. And so that's what we're currently working on. But she had identified that there's people gifts, there's gifts around people, there's gifts around healing, there's gifts around battle and war. There's gifts around info and like receiving information, disseminating information. There's gifts around belief, around the more classic, like what we think of in the scriptures. There's gifts around future, being able to see the future, being able to incorporate things of the future. And there's empathic gifts. There's 6 different kinds of empaths. A lot of people are like, I'm an empath. And I'm like, cool, what kind? There's clair gifts, like the being able to smell, being able to see, being able to know. There's change gifts, like creating change just by your very presence or by applying those gifts. And there's the spooky gifts, like actually being able to astral project and the stuff like that. So those are the 10 different spiritual gift families that were identified when I started working with her. And I'm so excited to see what comes of our collaborative work, because I know for me, I kept feeling like I need this in my life, and I need to see if she wants to offer this in a way that would, because it just needs to live in the world. It just needs to exist.
It really does. It really does. Well, this was the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. And I'm sure that so many people listening are just like, oh my gosh, that was so much and it was great, but I have no idea what just happened. So
that happens a lot in my world.
So where can people go to learn more, and where would you recommend people start, particularly on this journey of knowing themselves and knowing their gifts?
Absolutely go to lightfilled.co, like filled with light. And I have a free mini course. It'll go over your big 3 and how to understand that. And then also it'll go over the basics of human design. And as the collaboration takes place, I'll include stuff about spiritual gifts in there as well. But that'll bring you into my world. You'll be able to just receive the different things that are going on here. And you can participate as much or as little as you want. We have a very active Facebook group that is called Light Filled Astrology and Human Design. And we talk a lot in there. It's a great place to post questions, all of it.
Awesome. Naomi, thank you so much. This was so fun. I love these conversations. Again, I know that it's off the beaten path for a lot of people, but I think that there is a lot here that God uses, and there's much knowledge to be gained, knowledge of who we are, knowledge of who our creators are, and what it is we came here to do. So I love to look at these things as our own personal plan of salvation, and we can learn so much from them when we have that intention that is holy and sanctified and consecrated to God. So I appreciate you again. Thank you so much for your work and for all the things you shared with us today.
Thank you so much. I really loved our conversation.
One last thing before you go. Latter-day Disciples is an original partner and sponsor of Scripture Notes. Scripture Notes is an absolutely incredible application designed to help you deepen your relationship with God through transformative scripture study. I have used Scripture Notes for the last 3 years. I literally cannot say enough great things about this application. I love everything included in it, which is all of the LDS canon. In addition, it has all the Apocrypha, which you guys know I love. I love that it easily gives you access to Bible Hub if you want additional translations of the Bible. It also links to Blue Letter Bible, which I use when I'm looking up the Hebrew and Greek of all the words. Collection Notes is so incredible, allowing you to keep your studies on a particular topic, perhaps that goes intertextually across all of Scripture in one easy location. But honestly, the search engine alone makes this application completely worth it, okay? Again, I have used this for 3 years. I literally could not have written Consider Yourself as Eve without Scripture Notes. So if you haven't already, be sure, go check out Scripture Notes today. Click the link in our bio. You'll get a 2-week free trial, and it is super accessible and cheap after that. It's like $5 a month, okay? So go check out Scripture Notes if you haven't already. Again, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.